Our next speaker manages operations for the Centre of Effective Altruism in the UK. He has a background as CEO of a marine research charity and as an officer in the British Army. He is also an alpine mountaineering instructor. Today, he will do a talk on a career in operations and the risks and benefits of gaining career capital in your early career. Welcome up on stage, Josh Axford.
Cool. So I just wanted to share with you today my career in operations and talk through the risks and benefits of gaining career capital. So a lot of people have asked about what operations is and why career capital is important, so we'll talk about that first. And then I'll do a quick canter through my career gaining career capital and identify some of the lessons learned and the risks and benefits of intentionally gaining career capital throughout your early career. And then we'll wrap it up with a quick summary and a Q&A following that. So what is operations? I mean, an operations role is truly transformative in an organization. If you do it well, you are just a force multiplier for the output of that organization. It really is quite broad. You're dealing with all sorts of coordination problems across legal, finance, HR, procedures, policies, governance, and it's all about maximizing efficiency. So it's a really broad-ranging role, but therefore you need to have quite a lot of experience to be able to bring that to bear and do a very good job with it. So that's why I'm a huge advocate for gaining experience before moving into direct work within operations. So why am I here? I've had quite an interesting career. I think it's different from other EAs. I have been an operations officer in the British Army, an economic advisor in Ras Al Khaimah in the United Arab Emirates, expedition leader for some high-altitude expeditions, worked as a project manager on an oil and gas refinery, and most recently, chief operations officer and chief exec officer for a marine research organization. That last photo, I apologize, is a bit braggy, but it's the only one that I could find that would summarize sort of what was going on. It wasn't all swimming with whale sharks. Most of it was sat behind a desk. I started off by studying physics at Durham University, and the reason I studied physics was because I wanted to graduate with a degree in physics and earn lots of money. And this was very proto-earning to give. I hadn't really thought about it. It was more along the lines of, my brother is an investment banker. He's 10 years older than me, and he'd advised me, if you want to earn lots of money, then you study physics and you become a quant trader. And I was like, wow, that's great. I could earn lots of money and then give that money away, and it would be great. And it was before the phrase of earning to give, but it sort of made sense in my mind. So I was studying to become a quant trader. I did two summer internships in New York. I did my thesis on quantum pricing of derivatives, and I got really into it. But during the 2 summer internships in New York, I really began to realize that maybe this was quite, maybe not immoral, but not quite as moral as I thought it would be. And I thought maybe this is quite dangerous, and started to consider maybe there's something I could do that would be better with my life. And my last year at university really started to contemplate that and read around various philosophies and religions and started to think, what could I actually do that would be more beneficial? So as far as earning lots of money, that wasn't the answer. So what was? And this was before 80,000 hours. This was 2006. And so I started to consider, well, maybe I just got to do the obvious thing, which is go into international development. So I tried to find an organization that would take me on, but there wasn't a lot of graduate training schemes in the international development world. So I did the next obvious thing, which was to sell everything I had, my beloved Jeep, decks, and snowboard, and fly out to Mozambique and volunteer at an orphanage where, having played lots of football and painted a wall for 2 months, I then traveled off to Kenya and worked in a slum in Korogocho, teaching children English and maths, but not doing a very good job of it. And so having done this for a course of about 4 months, I was incredibly low. I just was completely useless and didn't have it had not met my expectations. I was incredibly idealistic and thought I was going to change the world, and I basically painted a wall in Mozambique. So fortunately, I'd booked a few days in a hut on a beach on the coast of Kenya, and spent that time reflecting, and it was pretty dark days, very hard on myself, and really quite low, to be honest. And so the first lesson I want to identify is don't be hard on yourself. Life is a marathon, not a sprint. So don't expect to have world-changing impact from day one. Think long-term, and most people have their biggest impact later on in their career. So it was during that time in the hut on the beach in Kenya that I really started to think, well, actually, I need to gain skills. Skills are the thing that I need. If I'm going to actually make any difference, I need to make a directed effort to gaining skills so that I can make a difference. The problems in Africa were ginormous, and I was so insignificant. I had nothing to offer other than painting some walls in Mozambique. So at the same time, I was also interested in economic development and was thinking, how did Africa do so well, well, not do so well, when it had all of these resources and had lost them through corruption, yet other countries had found resources and turned that into economic growth. So I traveled to the United Arab Emirates and decided to basically talk to anyone that would listen to me and try and understand why their economic model was working compared to the economic model in Africa. So it was just really interesting. It had double-digit growth for 20 years straight, and a system that seemed to be working. And the more I looked around, the more I spoke to people that figured out that it was a trickle-down system where the money was very much concentrated at the top and was trickling down through the economy. But at the top, there was lots of leakages on things like guns and expensive cars. And so I wrote an abstract of what this meant to me, and I thought I could potentially do a study on economic development within the United Arab Emirates. And I handed this to an academic in Ras Al Khaimah, who then, the following day, I was invited to see the Crown Prince of Ras Al Khaimah. I was essentially summoned to meet him and explain what I'd done. Halfway through that conversation, where I said, I think you've got some problems with your economy. There seems to be lots of leakages on luxury goods, and it's not really working very well. He said, OK, you work for me now, and I expect good things. So I found myself sat in an office in the middle of the United Arab Emirates, really quite confused about this bizarre situation that I'd found myself in. I really had decided that I needed to get skills, and here I was sat in a Department of Economic Development. So I had a lot of free time because there wasn't much else to do in the United Arab Emirates. And so I volunteered to work on a feasibility study for a gas plant that was there, just to gain some experiences. And the organization I was working for offered me a job in Colorado to work for them. So I flew over to Colorado and got a job in an office where I was able to do amazing training in a really short space of time. So it was an oil and gas company, which I wasn't that comfortable with because, yeah, oil, gas, carbon dioxide, not great, but at least they were training me. So within a year, I'd just smashed through several qualifications, done a lot of courses, pushed really hard to get on all of the punchy projects, and then ended up back out in Ras Al Khaimah working on the biggest project in the organization as the junior project manager for this 135 million refinery that was processing gas. I wasn't happy with it, but it was good training. So it was like a deal that I've made with myself. I could do this for 2 years, get as much out of it as I could, and then I would switch. So lesson number 2, in your early career, be especially hungry to get as much training and as experience as you can. Just really get out there and take on the training. So if you can find an organization that will give you courses to go on and develop your skill set, then that's really, really worthwhile. And so, yeah, so then back out to the Middle East, working on this oil and gas refinery. Not the dream job, but paying quite well. And I eventually came to terms with this, like, enough. I can get project management experience somewhere else. So I applied to a solar energy company, and and I got a job working with them. However, on the day that I went in to hand in my resignation, the organization I was working for, the oil and gas organization, there'd been an explosion at the plant back out in Ras Al Khaimah, and they basically didn't let me resign. They offered me a 300% pay rise to stay with them, and it was a massive trap, and I fell for it. So there's a strong lesson here as well, which is just you can afford to make mistakes in your early career. That was a mistake for me. I quit after about 4 months after basically selling out because I just couldn't live with the fact that I was just taking money over my moral values. But I think you can afford to make mistakes in your early career as long as you learn from them and you learn from yourself. I'd learned that I was susceptible to money, and I was like, okay, from now on, not be so motivated by that. But I'd also learned that I was very good at management, but I hadn't got very good at leadership. So I could plan, organize, coordinate, and control. I've been working on this $130 million gas plant in the Middle East, but I'd not really got this leadership skill set. And maybe if I was going to have impact in the world, then maybe I needed to develop that. So spent some time thinking about that. I'd got a bit of a runway from working in the oil and gas industry, so I had plenty of time to think, and ended up coming to the conclusion that perhaps I should go to the Royal Academy of Military for officer training in the UK, so the Royal Academy of Sandhurst. And it's a place that's renowned for teaching leadership, although it felt a little bit left field, and a lot of my friends really questioned the decision, in hindsight, it was fantastic training in leadership. And so I commissioned from Sandhurst as an officer, and then initially commanded a platoon of infantry soldiers, and then promoted to captain and was operations officer for a company of 100 soldiers. So this really was sort of leadership experience in spades, influencing, commanding, controlling a bunch of rowdy soldiers in difficult terrain. But I also managed to lead some expeditions. This is Denali, which is in Alaska. So I had a team of 14 that we climbed this in 2014, 6,000-meter mountain. Again, massive leadership experience, very rewarding. It was challenging, I'm not going to lie. It was a very hard thing to do, but it was also very enjoyable. I did a lot of mountaineering as well, so I can't complain. And that very well could have been me for the rest of my career. It was really enjoyable, and I was doing well. And when you're doing well in your career, and you're enjoying everything, it's very easy to stay in that sort of mode. But luckily, by that time, I'd married my now wife, and she had constantly reminded me that the reason I joined the army was to do some good in the long term. And so, in 2015, I left the army, thanks to her prodding and constant reminding. And so I think there's a key lesson there as well, which is make sure you surround yourself with people who will remind you of your long-term aspirations and intentions to do the most good you can. So I really advocate, being part of a EA community and having people around you that are going to hold you to task. If you go for career capital, it's very easy to get stuck in. It happened to me before with the oil and gas industry, and it almost happened again in the army. So it's only by having strong support network around you that you can stay true to that. So in 2015, I moved into direct work, and the first job that I took was as Chief Operations Officer for the Marine Megafauna Foundation. Now, I was 31 at the time, and so by this point, I'd gained enough experience to actually take a Chief Operations Officer role, which was really exciting, and it meant that I was managing this team in a hut on the coast of Mozambique, which was just beautiful, to be honest, looking at the conservation of marine megafauna, essentially. So it was a research and conservation organization. It was in a bit of a mess when I joined, to be honest, and I had to do all sorts of things that I'd never done before: brand development, strategy, web development, comms strategy, recruitment, fundraising. Like, these things I'd never had experience before. So this was a fantastic opportunity to really broaden my experiences and the skills that I have to offer. So we developed a strategy that was four-pronged attack towards our vision, which was a world where marine life and humans thrive together, surrounded by effective operations and partnerships. It was a really great experience working with a team to develop a strategy that was succinct, cohesive, and unified towards a vision that we all cared about. And we had some. So lesson number 5 on this is that working at a startup, and especially a fledgling not-for-profit, is a really good way to just get really broad experiences. You have to wear a lot of different hats, take on a lot of different roles. So once you've gained your early career skills, then going and working at a not-for-profit that is in the early stages means that you really have to push yourself out of the comfort zone and try a whole load of new things that you may never have done before. So how did I get from there to the Centre for Effective Altruism is just the next quick point that I'll before I wrap up. So back out to Mozambique, and we had this project where we were working with local communities, local coastal communities, looking at the intersection between humans and fisheries, essentially, and helping them create no-take zones and management areas so that they could maximize the yield of their fishery whilst mitigating indiscriminate catches of megafauna. And we had created no-take zones, closure areas, and we're also going into schools teaching children the benefits of marine conservation to make a generation of ocean guardians, and teaching them how to swim, because there's an awful lot of people who drown in Mozambique due to it being a coastal country that was once colonized by the Portuguese. There's surprisingly nobody can swim, so there's a lot of people that die through drownings. So when I was CEO of that organization, I started to really think about cost effectiveness and impact and how do I measure all of this. And through looking online and finding out about other people that were thinking about this, so Open Philanthropy, GiveWell, that's what led me to effective altruism. And then it was all about, well, what is the cost per square kilometer per year to protect essential marine habitat? And what is the cost to educate one child about marine education conservation? And what's the cost to save one life through teaching people how to swim? And so I definitely started to get driven by metrics that were linked to the effective altruism movement. And I started to consider, what is the value of saving one manta ray or one whale shark in an area that depends on these species for tourism revenue? And also I started to think, does any of this actually matter? Because if we've got super intelligence on the way, then really, maybe I should be looking at something else. And so when the job appeared for operations at the Centre for Effective Altruism, I applied and was fortunate enough to get that role, and I've been there for 6 months now. So to wrap up, operations is massively transformational within an organization. You have an opportunity to do something that's really amazing, but I really advocate getting early stage career capital. And then these are the 5 lessons that I've identified from my career, which is, don't be hard on yourself in the early days. Life is a marathon, not a sprint. Be hungry in your early career for training and experiences, responsibilities. Be curious and learn from your mistakes, and really, most importantly, learn about yourself and learn about the skills that you need to develop. Surround yourself with people that will hold you to your long-term aspirations to do good, and work at a fledgling not-for-profit as a great way to sort of hone your skills and go from there. So that's really my talk about the lessons that I've learned during my career. I hope it's been useful. And we've got a session now for Q&A if anyone has any questions.